Hi, I'm Marty Martin from DePaul University, where I teach in the Health Sector Management MBA, as well as direct that particular program. What I've been focusing on in this series, if you've been watching the series, is sharing with you quantitative decision-making tools. So you can put this particular tool, flowcharting, which will be the focus right now, within a broader context. If you haven't been watching the series, that's okay. Let's just dive in with flowcharting. So when you think about flowcharting, it's not the only tool, but part of your armamentarium or your arsenal or your portfolio or part of your toolbox. So there's certain steps when you do flowcharting. You're saying, well, wait a minute, Marty, you said flowcharting, but I see process mapping. So process mapping and flowcharting are very similar. So let's review the 6 basic steps to actually develop a process map. Could be a clinical process, business process, or a flowchart. Number 1, assemble and train the team. So you have to make sure that you have the key stakeholders that are involved in the process at the table, so that way you can accurately map it out. You also want to let them know too is that the purpose of this is not to result in a redesign process such that the only benefit is that they get fired. So prior to an EHR implementation, prior to implementing guideways or pathways, or if you're doing a merger or acquisition, your structure might change and your process might change. But to really enlist people in it, they have to be granted some assurances, not foolproof guarantees, that this is not going to result in them being fired, because if they sense that, they will probably distort the truth, and you need the truth. So number 2, determine process boundaries and desired level of detail. So if you're going to do an admitting process, for inpatients, then you don't want to make sure that you have admitting processes for the ambulatory surgery center, admitting processes for outpatients, admitting processes, for observation. So you really want to define and limit the scope. Number 3, determine and order the major process tasks. So first you're going to catalog all the process tasks. You'd be amazed, when you do a process flow map, how many tasks you can have. You can have hundreds, if not thousands. Some of those tasks add value, some detract from value, and some might be value neutral. So in this days of focusing on cost efficiency, you have to ask yourself the question is, why are we going to have a task in a process that's not adding value or is value neutral? Unless it's a compliance function or a regulatory function. So number 4, once you gather the team together, gather this information, then you begin to map out your process flow map. You can use Microsoft Project, you can use a software called Visio, you can use Office Suite by Microsoft, do it by hand. There are a number of different tools that you can use. Number 5, check for accuracy. So this is when basically you're working with one team to develop the process map. Then once you have it pretty well developed, you want to hand that off to another team. So that way they can verify it, validate it, and say, no, this isn't quite right, what about this? And in some cases, if it's an admitting process, or a scheduling process, or a registration process, or a discharge process, maybe you also have patients take a look at it and family members. Number 6, if you identify any gaps to that verification process in step 5, collect any other additional data. So these are the basic steps, pretty straightforward. So you really have to agree upon nomenclature or symbols. So this is not the list, but just a suggested list in terms of symbols. So you see the oval there, that's the beginning and the end. Kind of the box is the action step, that's the task, if you will. And that diamond there is the decision. So this is not the exhaustive list, but agree on what the symbols are and be consistent as you do process maps. So this is an example of a simple one. So the start, got a flat tire. So the decision is, do I change the tire, yes or no? If you say no, then you go one direction. If you say yes, then you fix the tire, and that's the end of it. So this would be called a high-level process map. Now, within that box, fix the tire, there's probably 30 or 40 little discrete steps, and you could map all those out, as well as decision points. So that would be a more granular, detailed map. In general, you want to begin with a high level, and then you begin to really get more detailed for a detailed level. So once you've done a process or a flow chart, there's another tool that goes along with this, which is called basically swim lanes, or what's called role lane mapping. How does this look? So if you note here, we have activities. So from take insurance information, dropping down to deliver a pathology request. Then we have the roles. So who does what in the process? So the clerk will take insurance information, sole person. So if that doesn't happen, who do you look at? So you look at the clerk. Now there's some shared responsibilities. So move the patient, could be the nurse or it could be the porter. So if something goes awry there, then you look at the nurse or the porter. So it's very important is that once you've identified the tasks, you map them out into a process flow map, then you want to do the overlay of the swim lanes, which role position is responsible for it, or which group or team. It could be an individual or it could be collective. Why is this important? We talk a lot in healthcare about accountability, accountability, accountability. This is not only a decision-making tool, but an accountability tool. So now I'm going to begin to focus on incidence and prevalence as the next tool, but I hope you have a good understanding about how to actually formulate and develop a flowchart or process map. If you forgot, go back to the slide where I had those 6 steps, follow that, and follow the examples.